Okay, I think we're gonna start. I'm just gonna quickly introduce Devin Dombrowski. He and Rachel Avila, sorry, I'm kind of rounding it up anymore. Avila is correct. Have developed this wildlife rehabilitation medical database. We've been using it for the wildlife care since the beginning of the year, and it's spectacular. I love it. I've been like checking records on the patients that have come in since I've been gone, and it's been very easy for everyone to use, and I think it has really streamlined a lot of what we do. So if you're, I would really highly recommend you seriously consider at least, taking it for a test drive, sample stuff, and we can go over this. But the nice thing about Devin is he's been a wildlife rehabilitator for about 10 years, probably. So he knows what we need, and he has built all these things into the database. So if you can think of it, he's probably already thought of it. So,
thank you.
But he likes suggestions.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you, Janet. Yes. Hello, all. My name is Devin. I do want to thank Nicole Carrion and Department of Fish and Wildlife for their endorsement. It's really fantastic. I wasn't really sure what the audience was going to be for this talk, so if you all could tell me how many of you are using the database or know about the database or have some sort of familiarity with it.
We want and
Okay, how many of you are using it? This half, that's perfect. And this half, do you all even know about it, or do you know absolutely nothing? Okay, so
we're all
It was schizophrenic crowd.
right.
All are done.
So ordinarily, I've got a little keynote presentation where I can give a bunch of slides about how what is the genesis of the database. But because we've only got about an hour, I'm going to skip that and kind of intro you to it as we actually just go into it. But to give you like a super quick, condensed 30-second version of the keynote, basically, as Shannon said, Rachel and I have been rehabilitators for a little over 10 years now, and long story short, we've heard over and over again the gripes of rehabbers and record keeping. And the range of how records are kept in the rehab world is enormous. There are a few fairly sophisticated databases out there, and then there's some very, very, well, I guess the most unsophisticated would be plain old paper records. That of course doesn't mean that paper records are a bad thing. They have the benefit of that you can transcribe your information really, really fast. But of course, once that information is written down on paper, it's basically on paper and it's nowhere else. You can't aggregate that data all together. You can't share it with your friends very easily. So, long story short, we've developed this database that has become very, very popular throughout California, and it's actually growing popular now throughout the country. And it's basically meant to alleviate all the stress of record keeping, but still give you the power that databases can do. Also, I'm recording this, so if I go too fast or I'm skipping over things, this will be on our website, on our blog, so you can go there and re-watch this. Or of course, if you have any questions afterwards, please do ask. The database is completely online. The URL, in case you can't see it up there, is wrmd.org. And you're welcome to go to the site and check out and read everything on here. Under the support section, there are a lot of tutorials and videos that we've recorded about describing how to do certain things, like simple things like managing your account or creating records or updating, searching, and basic functionalities. And there's just a lot of information here about basically to answer your basic questions. So to get into the database, first of course you would want to create an account. And what you would do is go up on the top right and click on sign up. And you would just fill out this form with your organization's contact information. And then down on the bottom, once you press sign up, your account's created. So I'm going to go back because I already have my account. And I'll go to top right and click on login. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Before you create an account, you don't have to create an account to play with it. There actually is a trial account that you're welcome to use. We have brochures that we can get to, but down here on the bottom is the login information for the trial account. And please go in and do whatever you want to do.
Yeah, don't play around in the big account and like your real account, because you can't really delete your records very
Yeah.
easily. So don't
If you
play
go and
around.
create a real live account and then start creating fake records, well, basically your annual report is going to be filled up with a lot of fake fluff. And that's kind of the opposite of what Nicole's asking. Okay, so assuming we have an account, let's just go right into it and how the whole thing works. So if I go to login on the top right, I just put in my email address and password. Logged in. And the dashboard page which it lands on is basically just got some generic information, which, generic stuff about my records. And I'll tell you right now that all the information in my account here is all fake and completely bogus. So a lot of the stuff here doesn't really make sense to real life, but it works well enough. So basically, out of the box, this database is meant to be as slimmed down as absolutely possible so that really, truly any rehabber can use it. Yeah, I mean, we all kind of know that the range of rehabbers throughout California, but really the country, ranges from very sophisticated organizations that have lots of staff and can manage lots of animals and lots of computers to single rehabbers out of their home doing their stuff. And there's no reason that no matter where you fall between that scope, that you shouldn't be able to benefit from a database to do your simple record keeping. So when we designed this, it was very important that we made sure that it was as slimmed down and easy as possible. So basically, you can, a few quick easy steps, create your record and update the disposition, and then be done with the animal. But if you wanted to, of course, increase its capabilities and be more sophisticated about it, we have ways of doing that. And the way it's organized is the links across the top are basically links of areas you would go to for accessing information about any particular case. Like if you wanted to get the rescuer's contact information for, in this example, I'm on record number 1. I could, here's all that rescuer's information. And you can actually see down below what animals this individual has brought in the past. So the database keeps a record of, repeat offenders. It's okay to laugh in this class too. And like initial care is basically like the first 24 hours of the animal, and we're still on record number 1. So this animal's first 24 hours are recorded on here. So we have like intake information, basically where the animal come from and why did it come in. Identity is just further ways to more uniquely identify that individual. Like if you put a band on him, or if you wanted to put in keywords to help, really kind of uniquely identify that animal. And at the end of the year, you could search for all of the records with a certain keyword. You can pull all of them up. And then initial exam information, which is fairly standard, which has body parts, lines for all the different major body parts, and you would fill them in. And then on the bottom, disposition stuff. And I'm going to go through this page a little bit more. And then continued care, the last tab is basically everything beyond the first 24 hours. So if that animal was with you for another day or 4 or 5 more months or however long, you keep his or its history on this section. But of course, that's all good and fun if you have records, but we got to start by actually creating records, right? So the links on the left are basically all quick links of various kinds. And the first link here on the left that we'll go to is quick link. Or sorry, first quick link is to create a new record. And on the new record screen, it truly is meant to be as simple as possible. So you can create your record or records all in one page. There are basically very, very few required fields. First being, of course, we have to identify the species. With that, you just type in the name of the animal that's coming in, or the species, the common name. So, coyote. So if we got in a coyote, we can just start typing coyote, and you can see it generated a list of known species. So I'll just select coyote. You can also, if you don't remember the spelling or whatever, you can click on look up species. and it will give you a list of all the animals that it knows in there. And you could click on the name. You can also put in species names, common names that aren't really in the database. So if somebody came in with a completely miscellaneous animal, like,
Wild boar is in there.
is it? It's not?
No, it's not.
Well, we should add it in there. So if you got in a wild boar, you could type in boar, wild. So you can see it didn't generate any kind of list, but I can still put it in there. And what happens is I'll get these warnings, and you may not be able to read that, but basically what it's saying is you can admit this animal in, but the database has no idea what this animal is, so the reporting on it won't be as accurate later on. Like, it doesn't know that this is a mammal, or that, well, it's not actually native to California, but it doesn't know where this animal is from. The benefit of all the animals that are in here, like coyote, is the database knows that this is a mammal, it knows that it's native to California, it knows that it's a carnivore, and for birds, it knows that the bird is or isn't part of the protected under the Migratory Bird Treaty Act, which is important because on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife year-end report, they only want those animals reported on. Yes, ma'am.
So those of us who do get in fake songbirds, maybe that we aren't sure,
Right.
we just put bird?
So there's a couple of things you can do. You can always, of course, best guess and put it in. But you can put in unknown. Oops. I don't know why I do this every time. So you can say unknown bird.
Oh, okay.
And now, after you create the record, you can update the species.
So once it matures a little bit, you can figure out what it is, you can go
You
back.
can change it, yeah, of course. Okay, I'm gonna go back to coyote. Okay, then the last thing is we say how many patients are coming in, and hopefully you're only getting one coyote. But if somebody came in with like a clutch of house finches, you could create all, if there are 3 of them, you can create all 3 records all at once. So you can just number of patients and pick a number. Let's say one coyote. Okay, so the next thing is the rescuer's contact information, and you can see that none of those fields are required, and basically that's because you never know what you're going to get. Sometimes you never get anything because the box is just on your doorstep when you come in the morning. But in an ideal world, you would collect all of it. And then the last on the bottom would be the intake information, like why is this animal even coming in? And the first thing you want to say is who admitted this animal in, and I'll just put my name. The address found is wherever it came from. I'll make things up to keep it fast. The date found, maybe it was found today and they brought it in today, or maybe they found it last week and they're finally now bringing it in. Observations is basically what did they see when they found this coyote, or why is it coming in? Hit by a car, I guess. And then did they feed anything to that animal? Maybe they actually well, let's just say rats. Maybe they actually did something appropriate instead of hamburgers. And then you can click on create these records or this record. So now, boom, it's done. That record is in. And so it depends kind of on your center what's better for you, whether you have like a reception desk where you can admit all the animals in as the people are bringing them in, or you can create records and then go directly to it and edit its information on there. Instead of if you're creating the records at your computer in your treatment room or whatever work you've got. So if I went to the rescuer, so here we're on record number 1, but the last record that I created is what I want to go to now. So I'll just click on last. And there is our coyote that we put in, which has no rescuer contact information, unfortunately. If I went to initial care, basically, the point is to fill in the blanks. So I'm not going to go and fill all this stuff in because I want to move along. But you would do your exam on that coyote, and you'd fill in the information. Now, I'm going to answer a question before somebody asks it, because people always do. Do I have to do all this stuff? Do I have to keep the records on the computer? And basically the answer is no. In an ideal world, all of our stuff would be on the computer and be digitalized, because that way it's really searchable and it's really archived for us and for you all in the future. But like I said earlier, the reality is, and sometimes the truth is, that paper records are just a little bit easier for people. So we do actually have a way where you can use this basically same layout system on paper. And I will show you how that works in just a few minutes. But just to ease any fears of this, you can do all this on paper as well. And if you have any questions, please feel free to ask. Okay, so that was creating a record. So you can see that I'm on record number 89, this coyote. And if I want to go to previous records, I can click on these links here, which will take me to previous animals. That's okay, but if I needed to go to like record number 10 or something way back, it would be kind of a drag. I'd have to click, click, click to keep going all the way back. So I can be a little bit more precise, and in this box here, I can put in a case number, and it'll go right to that animal. Which is perfect if I know what the animal's number is, but if I suppose I didn't know what the animal's number was, there are ways that I can search for that animal. So the link of the box over on the left here is this quick search. Allows me to put in some word or words where I can search. For example, I'll search for finch. And what it does is it searches the entire database for the word finch. So of course it found a bunch of house finches that I've admitted in, but it found like this red-tailed hawk, and it found it because it has the word finch in it under observations. So it's sort of a loose way of searching for something that hopefully you would search for something a little bit more precisely than finch. You could search in for broken or fractured hole, whatever. But the words that you're searching for will search for that across the entire database to allow you to quickly search for things out. Now you can also search more precisely. So for example, if you went to full search, there's all these different fields here, and all these fields are the same fields that are in the database. So I don't want to overwhelm you too much on here, but if I wanted to search specifically for finches, just house finches, then I could do that. And I could have said, give me all the house finches that are still, that have been released, and maybe their admit weight was under 15 grams, whatever. You can create your own searches.
And the 13 we're seeing is because of 2013?
Yes, exactly.
Is that what that is?
Yeah, thank you for pointing that out. I'll go where you can see a little bit bigger. So that 13 is this year. So every year it starts over from 1 to whatever. So this animal here is the first animal of 2013.
So that'll be automatic if we started tomorrow.
Yeah, if you start tomorrow, you start at number 1 in 2013. Now, I'm not going to say you shouldn't do this, but if you start tomorrow, or you started this year to admit your animals in for this year, you've only got a month and a half to get them all in. So it's not a bad thing to do, but if you want to wait till January 1st of next year to start in 2014, you might probably save yourself some stress.
And it automatically numbers your cases for you, so you don't have to remember what your last case number was.
No. No. What else can I show you? Okay, so I've kind of skipped over this screen here. I'll go to the last one, which is our coyote. So continued care, like I said, is like the after 24 hours. And really, I'll go back to initial care real quick just to show you. So on here, remember we had the intake information, identity, and the disposition. And then back to the continued care, we still have the identity information as well as the disposition. The only thing that's different on here is this medical record box. And basically what this is like the meat of the record. So if you're really active on the records on the website, and you want to maintain a history of all the stuff you've done with this animal, this is where you would type in what you've done. So maybe you weighed the coyote and he weighs, I don't know, 2,500 grams. And you type in your stuff, blah, 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 blah. It's very good. And then you update the record. And so it timestamps it drops it down below. It timestamps it because it knows exactly what time it is, and it records it in. And let's just kind of go ahead of, a few more days from now. Maybe you put in, you weighed it again, and it was 2650 grams. And you typed in, more stuff. So you can see, it keeps a log underneath here chronologically. And another little fun thing you can do, if you are using this actively and you're putting in the weights, you can actually graph what those weights are. This is sort of a boring graph. But you can imagine if you had a lot of weights in there, you can see a history of that. Now, I'm just writing in, one lines. You can write in something as simple as, the animal looks good today. Or if you're a vet, you can write in your entire surgery report, which could be paragraphs long. There really is no limit to the amount of stuff you can put in one entry. What else? Let's talk a little bit about the disposition stuff. So first of all of the dispositions are, I should say quote all. All of the dispositions here are the dispositions that U.S. Fish and Wildlife accepts, and consequently all the states accept as well. Now the reason I quote that is because we actually break apart died in 24 hours as opposed to died beyond 24 hours, as well as euthanized. And the reason for that is it's actually really helpful for you all to know, of the animals that survived the first 24 hours, how well did they do? Because the truth is a lot of animals don't survive the first 24 hours. On the annual reports, the dieds and euthanized are combined together into one, and it's one column as their and then, so besides disposition, so if you transferred the animal, you would specify like why was it transferred, or if you released the animal, how it was released, and then of course the date and location it was disposition to.
Devin?
Yes.
Under disposition at the bottom, it said void. What does void mean?
Okay, so Rachel said very early back when our talk started that if you create records, you can't really delete them. And that is true, you cannot delete records. There's basically two things you can do about an incorrect record. The first would be to just put a correct record over it, so change the species to something that's correct and put new information in there. The other thing that you can do is you can basically erase everything on the record, and just to make the disposition go away as well, just change it to void. That way it won't get counted in the annual reports or anything. I'll make this pen. Okay, so, sorry, yeah, let's talk about something. What is our time? Okay, so now we're going to get into something a little bit more fancy and advanced.
Does all that make sense?
Yeah, is everybody following me so far? I apologize for going along so fast.
Now this is just starting?
No. Thank you for asking. The database has been out for 3 years now. For the first year, we kept very, very, very quiet about it because we wanted to work out all the bugs and make sure everything was safe and fine. The truth is actually this year now has been our most active year with the most number of users because we kept very quiet at first. But it's very strong and going successful.
A lot easier than the manual records. Thank you.
let's talk a little bit more about like some administrative stuff for your account. When you first create your account, the user that you identify in there is the one user for the account. But if we went to settings, there's a whole lot of settings in here that I'm not going to go through them all. But the short of it is that you can create as many users for your account if you wanted. So if you want it to be just you, that's fine. But if you have other staff or volunteers that you wanted to have their own login, you can just add new users. And there are different permission levels. Basically, the short view is you'd probably make most of your other users just regular users as opposed to any kind of administrator. You can also make them a viewer, which means that they can view the records, but they can't make any changes to any of them. So a lot of times what happens is the staff in the clinic are all users, but the executive director is only allowed to be a viewer. We're recording this, so we gotta be.
Oops.
Okay, so when I talked about the stuff that was on the continued care screen and that treatment field, and how you can type in anything from "I'm okay" or "It's okay" to a full treatment record, you can also write in prescriptions in there and lab values. You can put in there anything you wanted, and that's perfectly fine, except that you may want somewhere a little bit more unique to put that kind of unique, detailed information, like prescriptions or lab values, because years from now, or at some point, you may want to search. Give me all the animals where I gave meloxicam and the PCV, the hematocrit, was under 45%. Well, we have a bunch of fancy features in here that you can turn on for whichever ones you're comfortable with. So if I went here and clicked on List All Extensions, on this page it lists all these extensions or fancy things that are available to you to use. So if you wanted somewhere unique to keep prescriptions, you could turn on the prescriptions extension. And you can see now that there's a link up here that says prescriptions. If you want to attach documents like pictures or PDFs, you can also do that. I'll show you that one briefly. Yes. So another very popular one is this one down here called Quick Admit, which I'll show you as well. And I mentioned paper forms. So that's one of the extensions, and I'll turn that on as well. And believe me, I could spend an hour on all of these, but we'll just go over some of the more popular ones. So I've got this turned on, so now I've got these links up here, so I'll just click on prescriptions, and we're on this coyote. And so suppose he had some infection or whatever, and I want to put in a prescription. I can just click on the little pop-up box, and we'll give him, I don't know, make up a prescription. 0.05. What should we get? Lux. Oh, there's one already in my browser. We'll just use that one. So you just write in your prescription, whatever it was, or whatever the veterinarian has prescribed. And the start date for that prescription, which generally will be today. And then the end date, which isn't required because it may be an open prescription, but we'll just say it's 3 days. And then we put it in. So now that prescription is in there. So there's a few other nice things about this, because it's nice that it's in there, but that may not mean anything to you or the volunteers who are actually in the clinic doing all the work. So you can print these prescriptions, and there's basically 2 ways that are available to you. You can either print this prescription as like an individual, kind of small on the screen, but you can see it. So this here is actually, it's a half sheet of paper. So if you could print it out on a half piece of paper if you wanted. One of the links over on the left that I skipped over is reports. And in here there's a section that says prescriptions. And one of the links is prescriptions due today. And this will include not only that prescription I made, but any other prescriptions that are due today. Of course, you can't see that very well, sorry. And so any other prescriptions that are due today for any of the other animals in there. So you may, at the beginning of the day, just go and print this out and hand it to your volunteers or whatever works for your clinic. You got this. So it's nice that this is written in there, but it would be kind of a drag if you really wanted to see like the chronological history of that animal, of all the things that have happened. If you had to go from continued care to the prescription screen, and if I had lab values on here to get, you wouldn't want to go to each tab to see all the stuff that's happening chronologically and then piece it all together. That would be it would be a waste of your time. So one other thing that happens as I write in a prescription, if I went back to the continued care screen, you can see that it writes it in there as well. So it's time-stamped, it's chronological. And you can, as the history of the animal goes on for days or weeks or months, you can see all the stuff on one screen. And this would be true if I had a lab extension turned on and I put some lab values in there. It would go in there as well. Or home care or lots of other stuff. Yes?
3 animals, all 3 are, doing really well that day.
Uh-huh.
You put it in one and then it populates the other 2?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked because so at this moment right now, no. But we're working on some updates for basically that'll come out in January 1st. That'll clean up some things on here, make it a little bit more streamlined. But one of the new things we're going to bring in is a way for you to batch update records. So you can, suppose you have those 3 animals and they all got released at the same location, right? It's a drag to have to go to each record and put in the same information. But we're creating a way where you can put it in once and then say, update these 3 records, go. So if you can wait a month and a half, yes.
Do you have a way to copy and paste that? I mean, like if you make the first remark, can you copy it and then paste it to the other ones?
Yeah, of course you
okay.
can. It's
Well,
just,
that makes a short
it's
sense.
annoying though to have to do that,
Yeah.
especially if it was like 30 animals
Oh.
and they were all being transferred.
Right.
You should be able to get that done in a few seconds. Okay, so I talked about paper forms. If I go back to reports, one of the other things on here are these forms. And we have 3 forms, paper forms. And you don't have to use these, but they're available to you. The first one, this admit form, is basically like a form that you would use at your reception desk if you had one, or some place where you actually take in the animals. This is something that the rescuer would fill out, for example, and they would type in, or write in, the date, and what if they know the species was, or you can put that in. Just very, 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 very basic information about that animal. And it's on here twice. You can't, I don't think you can see it very well. There's a little dash right there. It's on basically 2 half sheets of paper, so you cut it in half and use that. But the other form that's used very popularly is this one here, the intake form, which is basically a replica of that intake, or rather, the initial care screen, the first 24 hours screen, which it has all the basic intake information, but as well as the initial exam and basic, very basic like exam lab work stuff. So it's basically very, very, very similar to what's on that initial care screen. And so what some centers will do is they will go into the database, create their records, that way it's been created, and then they can print this form out and then just maintain the record on the piece of paper with the animal, because it's easier, better, more easier to their routines. Does that make sense? Yep.
And then you data entry it later when you have time.
Yeah, so in an ideal world, you would then transcribe that back into the database, which I sort of have reservations against because it is kind of double entry. So one second, in an ideal world, you would put it straight into the database. The other thing you can do if you have the capability is scan this piece of paper and then attach it as a document, which is better. It's certainly better than nothing, but it doesn't. You can't obviously search that. You have questions?
So there's no way to actually print a record with all that information, the prescription at the end? Like, there is?
I love your question. So, if I go to continued care, and this is not going to be the best example of that do anything, and let's just go to a different record. Number 1. Okay, so I'm on record number 1. So right here are the same links, or same link, intake form and treatment log, which I didn't show you. And if I click on these ones, it will create the record. Oh, it's not actually all filled out. Oh well. If it had a bunch of information filled out, you can see at least it has the intake information filled out. And if I had these other things filled out in the database, they would be there as well. So what a number of centers do, like I said, is they will create their record and then go straight to the initial care screen and just print out the paper form. Again, personally, I'm a database guy, so I think typing in is better, but yeah, share. The treatment log is basically a pretty standard, just a log of what has happened with this animal. It's not a very exciting log, or very exciting form. Okay, Rachel wants me to show you sharing records. So another link over here on the left is it says share record, and that is basically ways of taking the record and getting it out of the database so you can give it to somebody else. So if you actually wanted to print this record out, like if Nicole came and said, this animal, for whatever reason, I need its record printed out, you could come here and do that. And by default, it doesn't include everything on the record, like the rescuer's contact information. You just want to keep that a little more private. But you can tell it to include all the stuff on there if you wanted. Sorry? Okay, put it all. I don't know that this one's all filled out. But. So you say print the record. All right, so this one's actually taking a little bit longer because I told it to include attachments as well. I know there are pictures in this record. I'm impatient. I don't have that much time. We'll go to the next one. Yeah, that one was faster. So it's kind of a boring record, but if it had a bunch of stuff filled out, and it would produce it on here in a nice, presentable way. You can also email records to here. Yes.
I'm going back to her question under reports. So at the end of the year, she said you hit a button to send it all.
Yeah, use one minute.
But under report, if I wanted to report on all my finches, that's possible too.
Well, what would you want to report on?
The release date, let's say, or.
Well, okay. So there are two ways. There are a few ways you can go about that, and I'll just quickly finish my thought on here. You can email records if you wanted, or you can export out an individual record as well. Just say. So basically what you're asking is if you wanted to export out all the information about your finches and do stuff with it. So I should say that there are reporting tools in here and some analytics, graphs and such. But obviously this can't do everything because at some point you're going to think of something you want to report on that just doesn't answer. So what you would do then is you would say you do a search actually on finches. So you could first search for all your house finches, and then you could export them. In this case, you would probably export them to Excel. And you can choose which fields in the database you want to export out. So by default, it'll give you everything. But if you just wanted, when did they come in and when did they leave and where did they go to, that disposition location, you could do that. You just choose the field and say export. I want to make sure I don't miss this because if I don't talk about the annual report, then I'm sure everybody's going to be getting all upset. So let's get to the bottom line, right? To go back to reports, over here it says the annual reports. And there's the U.S. Fish and Wildlife one here. This original is basically their PDF. So if for some reason you wanted to fill out their PDF or see it, you can download it, as well as the California one is here. But if I clicked on for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, let's load this up. So it produces it. Like I said, the information on this particular database is fake, so it's not really accurate, but fills it all out. Yay!
Thank you.
That's cool, then.
And
That's
then,
filled out automatically?
yes.
Yes.
So you don't actually go in and enter all that?
No. Well, okay. So let me actually be precise. The short answer is you have to say what the disposition was as you take care of your animals, and it will tally up the numbers. And there are some things on here like U.S. Fish and Wildlife wants to know about criminal activity animals. I skipped over it, but down in the disposition area, there is a drop down. In a few weeks, it'll be a checkbox to keep things easier. But a checkbox, is this a criminal activity animal? So that'll put that into this list.
And it figures out if they were held 180 days or longer?
So that depends on, it knows the date that it came in.
Figures it out, yeah.
And basically, if there's no disposition date, then it assumes it's still in care. So yes. Quick admit, okay. I'm sorry. When we're done, I'm still here so we can chat if you have any further questions. But basically, yeah, you have to fill in a few things, but it does it all for you. And then the California report is actually much simpler. It just wants the disposition, so that they get thrown in. Okay, so one of our fancy new features is called Quick Admit, and it's something that a lot of people really like. You really like it. So suppose you, for example, you were talking about how, if I wanted to start tomorrow, you could start tomorrow. And the way that I would strongly recommend that you would do that is you would create your account and you would turn on Quick Admit. And the way Quick Admit works is if you go to New Record, there's now a link up here that says Quick Admit. So you go to it, and in this form, we're still creating a record, but we're skipping out all of the unnecessary stuff to get to the bottom line of that animal for its year-end report. So there's no rescue information in here. There's no intake information. It's basically what is the animal, when did it come in, some basic information maybe about why it came in, and then disposition. So, is it still in care or has it been euthanized? Is it gone? So you could literally create and finish an entire record on just this one page. You can say, oh, it was a house bench, it came in on this day, and it was euthanized on this day. Done. And you, where is she in? Whatever her name is. Connie. Well, Connie's not here, but Connie, she manages another center, and she literally just a week ago quick admitted in like 600 or 700 records in a few days, which I think is awesome. It's a little crazy too, but you can really just power through them, and then your annual report is essentially done.
Then can you go back and update information on an individual record? after
Once
you
it's
admit
in,
them?
it's in, and you can go and fill in the rest of it later.
And will there admit dates? Can we pick the admit date?
Yeah. So
I see.
right
Admit
there.
date. Cool.
So normally, when you're creating a record, normally, the admit date is the date you put it in. But Quick Admit, it allows you to specify what is the day that the animal actually came in, which it defaults to today because it may be today. 10 minutes. Oh, goody.
Change the species and.
Okay. So Rachel wants me to show you how you can change the species name. So we're back here on our coyote. And suppose I misidentified it. It isn't a coyote. It's,
Gray fox.
I was going to say a red fox, but so I'm skipping over this. The link right here that says change species / date admitted. If for some reason you needed to change the date admitted, you could do this here. Or fox. I've made this mistake before, identifying something and was like, I will admit it. When they're little, you can't tell. And just because we're here and I think it's fun, I'm going to show you this real fast. So we're on the attachments screen, and I have some pictures of a coyote or coyotes and a PDF. So you can attach stuff to your records as well.
And that's how you get your picture of your animal in? If you take a picture with your iPhone or something and then you download it to your hard drive?
Well, okay, so watch this. Like, just drag them in and they upload it there. You can actually, I think it's super cool. You can, if you're doing this on your phone, which I don't think is particularly user-friendly on a phone because it's really kind of small, but you can take a picture with your phone and it will upload in automatically. But, well, yeah, I've done it with Rachel's iPad, so you can do that as well.
Or you can email a photo to yourself. You know?
I'll show you.
Okay.
But there is ways to have your iPad, take a picture and upload it up.
So, believe me, I could spend easily a couple more hours up here, but we've only got like 5 minutes. So let me just answer your questions for you. I hope I'm not overwhelming you in such a short amount of time.
Or if you are using the system and you have suggestions or ideas,
Please.
or
Would you consider
Both of
doing a tutorial out of somebody's center for a donation for your time and everything for the whole staff?
I'm sorry, say one more
Would you
time. I've
consider
sent
doing
donations, yes.
a tutorial at somebody's center?
Oh yeah, Rachel and I have actually traveled up and down the state 3 or 4 times, or 2 or 3 times, visiting centers that are using this to help them, answer the questions and get oriented. So we're very, glad to come and visit you. And thank you for suggesting donations. That's basically how we're funded at the moment, is through donations. We are funded for the next few years, so we're not going to disappear if we don't get any money. But it is free to rehabbers because rehabbers don't have any money, but that's not free to us. Neither do we.
are centers outside California using it?
Yeah, there are a few, not nearly as many as are in California, but there are maybe 10 or so throughout the country that are using it.
And does MD stand for medical database?
It does. Yeah.
Or mass destruction?
No, it's not a database. So Nicole had mentioned, in her talk earlier today and briefly in here, she would really like everybody to eventually start to use this, even if it's just the very, very basic level of using the quick admit, because it ultimately will help. Well, it helps all of you, but it ultimately will help her as well. Because one thing that I learned as I've been communicating with her, when we turn in our annual reports, it literally takes her about 1.5 to 2 years later to actually get that information out of it. It takes that long to compile all the annual reports together into something that makes sense. And 2 years later, she sees a trend, that the number of mockingbirds was severely declining in this part of California. Well, 2 years late is late. She can't really do anything about it. So she was hoping to get to that point where they can find things very quickly. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you get everything's submitted, you get to the end of the year, it's time to submit this into Nicole.
Yes.
What steps do you take is there a spot on it that says submit to?
No, so
That will
but that is
say-
where we're going to. So right now what you would do is you would go and you would print out or produce the report. So here's the California. And you would still go through the same patterns that you do now. You would print this out and mail it to them. But we are getting to the point where we're getting closer and closer to the point where there will be some magic button that you push that submits all of it to her right then and there. We've got to get a little bit more involved with that and figure out how they want that.
So
Once you have it generated, you can email it to Nicole.
Yeah,
I don't
you could-
I don't know if you can to Fish and Wildlife,
I don't know either.
but I know that's usually when we do ours, we email them.
Yeah, you can email
Attach
to.
it, because it's a,
So you put this in a document?
Yeah,
and
this
then email it?
this report right here, it's a PDF.
yes, you
You
can
can-
Okay,
save
so
it,
just,
yeah, save it.
okay,
Save
just
it and
attach it and send it with an email. But,
Okay.
it's okay.
There's other reporting needs that she needs, you know, that go along with everything else.
Yeah, so she also wants reports on,
Volunteer CE hours.
right, continuing education and, you know, those type of things, which this does not make record of. But we are getting really close to that point, where that there will be a big magic button that says, go. Yeah. Any other questions, please?
I do. The user account
Uh-huh.
allows people to create records that automatically become part of the general account? Or is there a way to filter what gets put into the, like if you are in an organization with 10 volunteers and you have 10 people inputting, does somebody get to say this record is complete before it goes into the count? Or does it
Oh,
automatically
no.
just drop into the
When they're
general
created,
pool?
they're in the pool.
They're in the pool.
Yeah, but I imagine you have a center like with a bunch of satellite volunteers or taking animals and doing like that.
Is that what you're
Is that,
That's
Yeah.
also a question I have.
Okay.
I am a satellite rehabber. I don't work at a center. So I would need my own account for my animals, but my animals would need to be part of the big picture.
Yes.
So I'm not sure if
and
the
okay,
count
and just
means
so I'm clear, do you mean by the big picture would be whoever has
my
the
county
permit?
rehab permit, yeah.
Got it. So this is something like top on our list to figure out. So the short answer is your organization, whoever has the permit would need to create the account. Because that's ultimately who turns in the annual report. But we are working very hard right now on figuring out a way that basically the organization has the account, but you have like your special way of viewing just your animals.
So anybody who's a user has access to the general account
Yeah.
right now.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just a satellite like she is. We want to build it just for our animal, our report, but not send it to Nicole. We would only send it up to the chain of command that we have.
That's what we're,
I
that's
understand,
exactly
but that's how
what
we
we're
can
working
use it
on.
right now.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Until
That's
you send us an email that says, okay, we've created this.
That is like top on our list to figure out how.
Right, but we can start now, just us. So under user, we could say just our name.
Well, I want to say yes.
Double records
but-
in your database.
Yeah, with the problem, with if you start doing that now, you're going to get a bunch of duplicated records, and the annual reports are going to be all weird and wrong to Nicole.
It's tricky. The logistics,
Yeah,
we've
I-
really
that's what
been
I'm
working
asking.
on it. And, you
So
know,
how long can we go
I,
into your test system?
The trial's open for forever. You're welcome to go in there.
Okay, can you show how to get there one more time?
Yeah. I'll just
but
log out.
all the information that goes in there is from everyone that put information in there and played with it.
So-
It can't be your own
Okay, so
personal
it's down there at the
trial account.
bottom.
Yeah, it's written right here. It's written right there. If you went to the support, it's how to get started. It's right here. We have little booklets we're going to hand out if you want one that has it on there as well.
Okay,
Rachel
we
has
could
some
use
here.
that as a satellite without doing reporting.
No, because this is open to everybody in the world. There's a bunch of records. This is all
Oh, okay.
fake, bogus records in there. If you're part of this sort of dilemma, it would be great to get your contact information so that when we do resolve it, we can contact you and tell you.
We're working with Nicole with it because
Yes.
it's the reporting and you can use it, but you need a permit number, so you're under a certain account, and it's like, there's just all these little things going on that we're trying to figure out. What?
So if you are an admin, like you are whoever you're a satellite from, whoever your main person is, can that admin would create the users, and the users, I would imagine, would be the satellite facilities entering their information. Can the admin then go in and search by the user, say, you know, Joe Smith, look at what he's entered in his stuff, or is it just the admin is looking at everybody together? Does my question make sense? Can the admin search by the users, see what the individual users are entering?
No, but
Okay.
that would help to solve this.
That
Yeah,
would
Well,
be-
okay, it should be clear. Yes, you can, but it's not nearly as precise as what it needs to be for that to resolve this. Because when you, I'm sorry, when you like you saw when I was entering in information, you know, who he admitted by, I just typed my name in there. Well, that's not really any good. It really should, if it's going to be unique to you, it should automatically have your name so that it knows that you did it and it's your animal. So
And then your administrator, but at this point, the administrator can't go in and search by the individual users that they may have created, that may be.
no, at this point, no. But that's part of this thing that
What you're
we're
trying to
figuring out
get
right
sorted
now.
out.
And there might be some way in order to separate out, if all you are satellites, which is a lot of places, you have your organization with all these satellite people, like there's gotta be a way to, it should be under the organization, but you should maybe only have access to your animals, but the thing is like the numbers, how you gonna do the numbers, so you've got 10 satellites going through one organization, then your numbers are gonna be kind of weird. You see, like you're gonna accession in 1 through 5, and you're gonna have 23 or 26.
Yeah, they would.
So there's a lot of logistics that we haven't quite figured out, and depending on, we gotta work with Nicole, because if she wants everyone to be using this in California, we gotta figure out how to make it work.
But then each satellite could have its own name under the master.
I mean, like
It's
possibly, yeah. I mean, yeah.
If we put down there, create users, we create 10 users. Those 10 users would all be linked together. That first, and whoever the next user of those 10 would get the next sequential number for us or not?
Yeah. It's
Okay,
one day,
that's-
it's one
Yeah,
system.
Okay, that's answered.
Yeah.
I'm getting the eye like stop now. So if you have any questions, you have the last.
Does anyone want a flyer?
Thank you all for coming.
Bravo.